I don't think this is I don't think this is the Eagles are like, the Jets are really bad in the AFC East. So that's, the Eagles are, that's right. Is that your team? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't.
I'm sorry, I got something in my eye there, Chris. Don't worry about that.
So the Nick Sirianni offense is here, Jody. It's fully here. Every part of it.
It is here, and as John and I have discussed at length, maybe more 12 personnel than when they drew it up when Nick first showed up at the Eagles headquarters. All right, here's our next guest. We had him on a couple of months ago, and he was great when he was on with us. We're looking forward to talking to him again since football returned across the National Football League last night in the terms of the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I almost stayed awake for the entire game. Sorry, it was too boring. I fell asleep. Chris Landry, did you make it through the entire game last night?
I did. Looked at it, and well, obviously with a lot of my consulting work I do, I'll have to look at the tape. Preseason is actually fun to evaluate young players and get a feel. It's not good for fans, it's not good for media, because it's not designed to put together game plans to win a game. It's designed to obviously installs, work on things. And if you're looking at that and you're studying personnel and you're looking at the scheme and, what they're trying to work on, for example, if you want to, you're working against a blitz, you may not, put a tight end to the side to help with the blitz. And in preseason, you want to see how you handle that so that you take that into the regular season. As we're in this situation, we're going to have to get this guy some help or what have you. So I find it very, very helpful in the process. But the people that look at the results and think, okay, well, the wins and the yards and this guy's going to be great or this team's going to be, it'll get you crazy. And for those of you that bet on these preseason games, God help you. You need help. You need to get help today. I get it. It's been a long time since you've bet. I get it, but you're better off just buying a lottery ticket because they're not. That's a different focus.
They're not trying to win the game. So, Chris, you've been around for a long time. Has it changed at all as far as a coaching perspective, scouting perspective, how valuable these preseason reps are? Obviously, last year we didn't have a preseason, so it made it more difficult. This year it's scaled back. Have coaches, put more emphasis on these joint practices, or are they as valuable as ever, those preseason reps?
Well, you're putting more emphasis on joint practices because people are trying to look into that more and more, because if we're going to reduce preseason games, you've got to get that. So you need good work. Couple of things. Your roster's, even at its large, state in training camp, is not enough to just be hitting your guys. You need some other work. Tough to do joint practices in COVID. Everybody says, well, we got through the season last year and all that. Yeah, you can get through a season. But from a football execution standpoint, it sucked. I mean, it just, the development part just wasn't there. It's to the point now where you're using about the first 4 to 6 games of the regular season is almost like a quasi preseason game. I mean, you're trying to win them. I don't mean that. Yeah. But you're trying to work through all sorts of problems that you may or may not correct depending on the severity of it. But it's changed. Look, a long time ago, we used to have 6 preseason games. Mm-hmm. But that's when you had a true off season where the guys would come back from selling insurance or selling cars, and they would spend, and you'd report July 5th. And now it's a different world. So the biggest problem I have is, if you have preseason, the problem the owners have gotten is they want to stick that into their season ticket package, which is, you're ripping the fans off there. And I think that practice and utilizing it's really important. Here's the other thing that is a tremendous impact last year. You need to add a receiver, a safety, any position, how are you going to evaluate other preseason games if you have less and less of them?
Yeah.
So as you talk about, well, we're going to pick up this guy, you don't know how they're doing. I signed Frank Wycheck based upon, I had a grade on him coming out of Maryland, but based upon how we did we actually worked against the Redskins and that based upon that, I kind of had a feeling, little intel from them that he might not make their team, and so I was kind of aware of that and really liked his work, and he was a really good player for us, and a lot of things like that you can get in preseason games or in scrimmages. So I think as we see less and less preseason games, we're going to see more and more work with teams. But we got to get past this COVID stuff, where right now you can't do work with teams because you got the protocol, and then you're worried about getting your entire team vaccinated. Now you got to worry about how they it's just it's a mess right now, and it's not. I know the finished product, and people see that, they sit down to eat the meal. But for those of us that you got to be involved in cooking the meal, it's not all that pretty, because how do you evaluate a guy if you don't have preseason games, or you don't play as many of these guys, or you don't have scrimmages? It's definitely going to change. But look, like anything else, I tell guys all along, guys I do stuff for, and some of them are young. I can't believe it. I said, look, you will learn that you don't make the rules, you have to learn how to adjust them. When I first got in the league, we didn't have free agency. I didn't like it. I didn't think, I understood why. You adjust to it. You just do. If you don't adapt, you die in anything. But in this league, that's the case.
Chris Landry, our guest here on Birds 365. You got to check out first his website, LandryFootball.com, and his podcast as well, Landry Football. All right, Chris, I need you to set me straight here, because I took a stance last year and it woefully blew up in my face. And I don't know if I should take the same stance in reverse this year. Last year, I kept saying the Eagles are going to win the NFC East because Doug Peterson. And they have a Super Bowl winning coach, just a couple of years removed from a Super Bowl winning coach, whereas the Giants have a brand new coach, the Cowboys have a brand new coach, and the Washington football team has a brand new coach. Major advantage Philadelphia, except the Eagles finished last. So now this year, the three other teams in the NFC East have returning coaches, and the Eagles have the brand new wet behind the ears coach. If I believed what I believed last year, the Eagles were well ahead of the game, or it didn't play out that way. Should I now believe the exact same? The Eagles are up against it because they have the only rookie head coach? Or should I say, well, I look at my results from last year, Eagles can actually win this division with a rookie coach?
Couple of things. The division is still not very good, and kind of top to bottom, you can maneuver teams up and down a little bit, 2 or 3 games more than most divisions, and that's more due to the mediocrity of it. Still, look at the roster. I would look at the Eagles in not by a wide margin, but I would put them 4th in terms of a roster. I think they've got more issues. If you look at others, you've got a little bit more stability at quarterback. The Giants have got to learn what they have in Daniel Jones, but they've put a lot of weapons around him. The Redskins have a really good defense and a lot of talent, and they've got a solidifying quarterback that they can win with. I'm not talking about win big, but maybe win with in the division. And I think the Cowboys, you wonder about their depth, but they're in a little bit better shape. The Eagles is, what do they have in their quarterback? Is it going to be a good enough passer? Are there enough weapons? You know about that. I think Devontae Smith is going to help them, and obviously after the slow start for Jalen Reagor, that's putting it mildly. You wonder they have enough weapons and to play around them. Offensive line has been good. Is it good enough? Is it getting old? Will it? I don't think this is I don't think this is the Eagles are like, the Jets are really bad in the AFC East. So that's, the Eagles are. That's right. Is that your team? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I didn't.
I'm sorry. I got something in my eye there, Chris. Don't worry about
that. I didn't. I actually forgotten all that. I was just doing.
I appreciate your candor.
Yeah,
Thank you for your candor.
Yeah,
It'll be my great pleasure to have you back on the show when you get to 8 and 9 this year.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you do, I want to talk about it because that's going to be a lot. That's going to be a lot of fun to see how they do it. Because right now I can't see it. They're just forget about any. They're teams that are like really, really bad. They're building and they got a long way to go. And relatively speaking, in their division, it's a long haul. I don't think that's the case in this. With Philly, although I put them fourth, I mean they could easily finish second. We're talking about a very compressed division, but. No, I think they've got some real issues, and I think young coaches. Look, I've seen guys have success. He's a first-time head coach. Obviously, Ron Rivera was a real positive addition for Washington. I think in time Nick can do a really good job, and I think for him it's going to be what he can do with this offense, and maybe he can get more out of it. And if he can, then that's where they're a little bit more of a player than they may look right now, or vice versa. But I think in terms of a roster, I think they're fourth in the division right now. You got running back situation, receiver situation, offensive line getting a little bit. I mean, they've got some good strengths on this team, and other teams in this division have weaknesses. But you start marrying them up a little bit, you know how this plays out too. The health is going to be important. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody in this division is a real deep playoff threat. But look, my mind has been changed in the course of the regular season before, so I'm curious to see.
Well, I want to try to change it, Chris, because you brought up something interesting about adapting. One of the things Doug Peterson, I think, had difficulty with last year was COVID, was the protocols. He's a guy who likes to be together. He's a guy that likes to connect from that thing. Now you have a very young coaching staff. Nick Sirianni, I've been down there for every day of practice. Sometimes they go 75 minutes. That's it. Everything's real quick. Everything is real structured. They might go 90 minutes. They're not going over 90 minutes. Do these young guys maybe have more of an open mind as far as all these restrictions? They're more willing to be malleable, or am I just going down a primrose path?
No, I think you're right on. I think young guys and guys that maybe are more flexible, more along the lines of adaptability of doing things a different way, figuring out a different way to do it. I'm a little bit more old school myself. I do think there's a lot into the younger guys doing it. No, I think that's a positive. I think the issue though is that's great in terms of maybe team development, cohesiveness, but how good are they? That's the real key is how good are they at quarterback? How good are they in running back? How good are they at receiver? That in the end is going to determine, how good this team can be. The offensive line can lead them. One thing I will say, I think in lines of scrimmage, this team holds up better than even some in their division. But you look at the skill position guys, the making plays in space, that's going to be the key for this team. Quarterback, receiver, running back, linebacker, secondary, those are areas of question that if they are positive and they can get more out of them, that's where they become a better team than they may look right now. And that's, again, all relatively speaking, because sometimes a team's strength falls down or, in a relative sense. But, I think that new leadership is key in terms of coaching. I still am a little bit concerned organizationally, not having a strong football guy. I'm an old school guy in this regard. Not having a strong football guy running things always concerns me because I think having somebody that's really good with running cap issues is very valuable. But that person needs, in my opinion, needs to be guided by a football decision. And when guys are involved and got the power from a cap standpoint, and they basically make their decisions with their ears, because they got to go with people tell them because they don't have the acumen to evaluate, I think that's where you can have mistakes. I think that's where you can have mistakes in relating to coaches. It's mistakes in getting things done in personnel that may sound good in almost fantasy football land-ish.
Yeah.
In
like
real
drafting a quarterback in the second round when you just gave the other quarterback $140 million.
Well, yeah, and those are big decisions, but are you evaluating them correctly?
Yeah.
What's the, it's if you want to take a quarterback, is it the right quarterback? So when you're constantly trying to figure it out and trying to be the smartest guy in the room, you usually end up exposing yourself there. So look, I'm old school. I think that it's a business, but it's the business of football. And if you don't start from the other thing too is you can, when you're not a strong football guy, you tend, and here's the biggest problem actually, is you tend to listen to the coaches. The coaches have more weight and there's no checks and balances. So, I mean, if a coach will tell a front office guy that doesn't have a strong football background, that's never coached, that's never been a scout for years, then that's going to sway the room. And I've been a coach, been a scout. Coaches want to coach easy. A guy that is better at picking things up and learning things and he's easier to coach is a guy you may want to get or keep. More than the guy that is not quite as good yet, but it's the best fit for your team. He may not be the best today, but by November, he would be the best. It's those type of decisions that it's not butting heads. It's trying to make people understand, look, you got to have this vision. And I can tell you, as coaches, you can be more narrow-minded. As scouts, you can see things a little differently. And having, to me, the best of both minds together gives you the best way to work. But when you don't have a strong football guy in an organization running it, they tend to get overrun by coaches' decisions, or they tend to kind of go. And then, people will say, well, he's making this. He's not making the decision. He's the guy talking in the press conference. He has no clue, what he's talking about in terms of evaluating players or schemes or anything like that.
All right, Chris, I'm going to ask you to put both of your hats on, former scout, former coach, and give me your take on what's going to happen in Green Bay this year. From a football standpoint, we know Aaron Rodgers, not only as good as it is, but maybe as good as it's ever been at his football skills. I've said it on the air many a time. He might be the most talented quarterback to ever play the position. Holmes may surpass him. The Kansas City kid may surpass him someday, but Mahomes not there yet, but he may get there. So from a football standpoint, we assume even at his age in the 30s, since Brady's doing it in his 40s, that Rodgers can still do what he did last year when he was the MVP. But there's relationships, but there's promises, but there's ways to be handled. There's coach, general manager, player relationships. How's it all going to play in Green Bay this day? Mr. Been there, done it all. How, from a Packer fan standpoint, is it going to play out?
Well, it's tough because I'm not in that building. I mean, obviously, there's been poor communication. So the way I would anticipate this working is, Aaron is going to be totally engaged with his team. He's got a lot to prove. I think it's his last year. Let's just go on to the assumption he's going to be traded at the end of the year. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see the best of effort, the best of focus, the best of togetherness from the team in that regard. Now, where does that take them? How far does that take them? I don't know. Look, they were pretty close last year. I think they can be pretty close this year. I think they've got some improving weapons. They've got as good a receiver as there is in the league. Maybe not as deep, but they've got some weapons. Got a good offensive line. So it starts there. I think they'll be, to me, the team to beat in that division and certainly one of the best in the NFC. At the end of the year, I would guess they're going to be traded because everybody talks about the GM. The guy that people don't talk as much about is Mark Murphy, who's the president.
Yeah.
And he's kind of the other part of the problem, but he's not talked about as much because maybe there's not as much of that communication. It's more Gutekunst. Now, is there a possibility that Murphy and Gutekunst are gone and Aaron Rodgers stays? Who's going to make that decision? How that's going to play out? Don't have an owner in Green Bay. So this is not like, okay, if you had the same situation in Philly, then Jeffrey Lurie can say, you know what, I'm going to side with Aaron Rodgers over you other guys. But, well, doing this is, you're going to, could that happen, though, in Green Bay? And those guys are going and Aaron stays? And you say, look, we particularly if he wins it all, that's the interesting story. That's the storyline. Yeah. Let Green Bay go to the Super Bowl, and Aaron Rodgers is the MVP or just plays great, and they win the Super Bowl, and then they got to trade him at the end of the year. That's your story. That's going to be something that this has never really happened this way. Well, because at that point, you got to figure out, how do we keep this together, and what do we need to do? Who do we need to throw under the bus, and how do we get the bus? Who drives the bus? That we can. I mean, that's going to be an unbelievable storyline if it happens that way. If it doesn't and he falls short, then there'll be that wiggle room to say, look, he wants to go. We're moving on. We drafted up. You know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, but Chris, that's the part I want to bring up to you, because you said the presumption. And I think Jay Glazer's the latest to put it out there. The Packers have promised Rodgers they're going to trade him after this season. Now, from my standpoint, as a former coach, that aspect, coaches never want to be lame ducks because players know they're lame ducks. They never want to be on that final year of their deal. I don't think it works. Is it going to work having a lame duck quarterback when everybody knows he's got one foot out the door? What if he's got a bulky ankle? Is he going to fight through it, or is he going to say, I'm out of here? I'm not going to play this game. How does that lame duck part of it shape up for the Packers?
I think it's a fair point, a fair question. And I think it is fair to think, will he handle that way? Knowing Aaron Rodgers, that competitiveness, the fact that he wants to do it, he wants to prove, everything, I think he would play. I think he'd probably want to play through a shattered ankle. I think he's that type of guy. Not everybody would be. And I think everybody's in on it. Look, I could be wrong. I'm not in that locker room. I believe two things. The way that team just kind of galvanized around the quarterback. I mean, they're all for the quarterback. Pay him. He deserves it. He deserves that respect. I think it's galvanizing almost to the point of where everybody, without saying it, they're all on Aaron's side and not against the front office, but in that fight, that locker room is like 100% in Aaron Rodgers' favor. So I think that's how that's going to play out. I don't know, but that would be my guess. But to your point, we've seen a lot of those guys do that. I mean, would I think everybody would handle it that way? I think a lot of guys would handle it the way you're suggesting. Maybe I'm not going to fight through this. Maybe I'm not going to fight through that. We've seen a lot of guys do that. But you know what? If you're going to be a guy that's going to want to be traded, and you're going to want to have a good year. I mean, if he doesn't have a good year and he doesn't seem engaged, I agree with everything Jody said. But all of a sudden, do you start to think, does this guy have, am I going to want to trade what it's going to cost me to trade for Aaron Rodgers? Am I getting Aaron Rodgers? I mean, I think, though, you don't want to put that question mark. One other thing, though. I haven't seen it, and I'll get it because I've got access to it, is they restructure that contract when it goes through the league office. Here's what I'm looking at. It's fine. Well, we give word and all that stuff. There's something, if they're smart, Aaron Rodgers and his game is smart, and I think they are. There's got to be something in that contract that triggers it, because we're going to trade you at the end of the year. That doesn't mean squat.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a poison pill. So in other words, they put here's what I would have done if I were them, and I'm negotiating for teams, but if I'm the player, say, the way you guarantee it is you put a poison pill and say, if he's on the roster March 1st, you get a $60 million signing
bonus.
Roster bonus. He ain't gonna be on the roster then. That's where that it's done. I don't know that's been done. I'm curious. What is that poison pill that says, Dome, this is you can bet that. Because at that point, then you can go to him and say, do you still feel that way? Or if he wants to stay, you can always rewrite that out again. Right. But, that's the only guarantee you got that you're going to be traded. Because I don't know if he truly doesn't trust the front office, why is he going to trust their word now? I'm curious to see that,
Understood. Chris, I've had you on my show for years, and I've always appreciated your scouting skills. So my final question is going to be on the scouting road. And we'll have you on again 6 weeks from now when we'll know better. And we'll have you on again 6 weeks after that when we'll have a real good grasp. Part of the offseason story for the Eagles has been they've got draft assets. They've got their own pick, which could be high. Mm-hmm. They've got Miami's pick. They could potentially have the Colts pick, but it's now looking more like a 2 than a 1. You get my drift. They've got the ability to be a major player at the top of next year's first round of the draft, and that may include a quarterback if Jalen Hurts doesn't live up to the highest of expectations. Give me your top 3 quarterbacks in this draft, well acknowledging that nobody had Joe Burrow number 1 in August before he went number 1.
That's correct.
Nobody had Zach Wilson at number 2 in August before he had the season he had, and I'm readily acknowledging this could change plenty before the draft. But as we sit here early August, give me the top 3 quarterbacks in order in your mind in college football that are going to be draft eligible at the end of the year.
If I were Eagle fans, I'd watch a lot of Oklahoma games and watch Spencer Rattler develop. And look, when I make comparisons, and when we make comparisons as a scout, we're talking skill sets, not necessarily that this guy is going to be as good as, but he's got a lot of the Patrick Mahomes playmaking outside the pocket, throw off different platforms. He's really, really good. And I think that somebody you need to pay attention to a lot. I do think the kid from USC, Keaton Slovis, is very good. I think he's somebody that folks should pay attention to. Those are guys that jump out at me right now. There's some other guys that I think have a chance to be good, but they're not quite, where they need to be yet. But I think Sam Howell of North Carolina is good. He could be to me, he's a lot like Baker Mayfield. And nothing wrong with that. I think he's doing a good job in Cleveland. But I think Spencer Rattler can be special. Let's see if he develops along those lines. But I think he's the most intriguing guy that would make sense. And I think that Keaton Slovis is more of a guy that can really be good in the pocket, that is really accurate, that really knows where to go with the checkdowns and gets it out on time. So you've got, I think, 2 guys there that I think can be really good. Look, I think the kid out of Nevada, Carson Strong, is good, but got a lot more development to do there. But that's would be my suggestion there. And cheap plug. We cover the draft all year long. So over at LandryFootball.com, and we'll certainly be back. We'll keep everybody as the games go on, as they kick them off, how they're developing, how they're going. Because you guys know this. You've heard me say this, before, and particularly Jody being on with you a bunch, is it's not one of those, well, everybody's got their draft board and then they move them out. It doesn't work that way. It's you make your draft board when you get into your meetings in like early March, and that's based on stuff that hadn't even happened yet. So the guys I'm talking, that's fine. It doesn't mean like, oh, that's the best guy. The rankings, if you look at Landry Football, we put them in tiers, watch them. These are the things. We'll grade them as they need to be graded. Because in this day and age, you don't have 2 or 3 years of them playing college ball, and let's see what they do this senior year. It's like, some of them may start 1 year. Right. Or, may have a half a year. So it's like you're looking strictly on potential. Let's see the production and how they develop and grade. But that's my thoughts there for Eagles fans, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and by the way, one of those football guys that Howie Roseman listens to, Chris, is Lincoln Riley. Loves Lincoln Riley. So that Oklahoma connection.
A lot of people do. Lincoln is very well thought of. He's done a great job with quarterbacks. That offense is built on the counter tray and the ability to be able to work the passing game off of that with a lot of the RPO concepts. He's really bright. He's somebody that is stuck with Oklahoma. They're going in, obviously, you guys know they're going to be heading to the SEC soon, but a lot of that Oklahoma, they're always nervous. He's going to stay with us forever, and he's a guy that I know NFL people like, particularly in this day and age where you're looking for the guy can get it done with the quarterbacks. He's done it with a lot of guys, including a guy that we talked about earlier that's on the Eagles roster. So you're absolutely right.
Yes, Jalen Hurts.
I learn a lot about what's going on in both the college and the NFL when I go to Landry.com. You should do the same.
Landry.
And we give you a chance to learn firsthand when we bring Chris onto the show. Chris, no full well, we're going to call you again in about 5 or 6 weeks after the season's underway. Thanks much for hopping on with us today.
And I'm gonna be pulling hard for the Jets, mainly for you, just because. And don't you forget me when they got their fifth and sixth win. If I don't get a call from you, you're gonna hear from me.
You buried them. You buried. That's all right.
Yeah, I know. And the minute it went out my mouth, I'm like, thank you, as a Jets fan. I think my memory says a Jets fan. I shouldn't have said
that's
the
all
same
right.
thing.
Chris, we love you. Appreciate you
love you guys.
Board.
Have
Always
a great weekend.
pleasure.
Enjoy the start of the season. Let's talk soon. Take care.
Done deal.
Thanks,
Chris Landry from Landry Football.